That's good stuff.
Coming up now on 7-Eleven, it is Monday morning. Where'd the weekend go? All right, Monday really is the best day of the work week, though, because you start out fresh.
Just keep telling yourself that, baby.
That's what I'm trying to tell myself. All right, so as promised this morning, joining us in studio is the Scott Police Chief, Chad Leger, one of the candidates for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. And, sir, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. All right, so what we are going to do here this morning is we are going to spend this hour with Mr. Leger. The other candidates also will be given their opportunity this week as well. So we'll have, our usual little features in between. And, of course, we'll update news and traffic for you. But it's a chance really to hopefully get to know this young man and get to know him as a person and as the candidate. So we invite you to kind of sit back, listen, find out what you have always wanted to know maybe about Chad Leger. So, again, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. So I am very curious as to, let's start off with first, what's the campaign been like? Has it been like? Are you going door to door? Are you meeting people? Describe what you've experienced thus far.
It has been a remarkable experience. We started our campaign back in January, and the strategy of campaigning goes in different phases. And we worked, door to door. We made phone calls to lots of people. We had lots of meetings, lunches, breakfasts, brunches. Probably put on a few pounds while with all of this, and lost a little bit more hair and put a few pounds on. So it's been a great experience.
So tell me, in terms of your background in law enforcement, if you would kind of give us a synopsis of your background a little bit for folks who may not know you.
December 1st of this year will make 27 years that I've been in law enforcement. I started 14 years with Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office and worked in every aspect of the Sheriff's Office, from corrections, patrol, detectives, narcotics. I worked in K-9. I was on a SWAT team, worked on the motor units as well. And then in 2003, I became chief of police for the city of Scott, and I've been a full-blown administrator, working the budget and working with the council and the mayor and preparing different operations for the city of Scott for the last 13 years. So
what motivated you years ago to decide, hey, law enforcement, I want to make that my life and my career?
It's very simple. It's to help people. We all know that law enforcement, our firefighters, our educators, we're not in it for the money. We're not going to make the great salaries and become millionaires in any way, shape, or form. But the bottom line is to have the heart and the passion to serve people and to help people when they need.
Now, administratively, when you became police chief there in Scott, was it what you thought it was going to be?
Well, coming from the enforcement side of things and working that aspect of it, there was quite a bit of change. I was very fortunate that my assistant chief had been there for many years and was able to help and guide me and show me and walk me through a lot of the administrative things of learning. Plus, going through the Louisiana Association of Chiefs of Police and going through many counseling and over 230 hours of continuing education training that we've retained as a chief and as an administrator. They put classes on now, and that's one of the things that we've worked on, working with the LEMI board through Baton Rouge, to make sure that when you have a new elect the chief, that it's not just you just thrown to the wolves.
Right.
You're educated, you learn, and you're taught how to work budgets, and you're taught how to do the administrative level things and things like that. So.
I'm curious. Obviously, we have three other candidates in this race. People can look at websites, they can look on paper as far as what differentiates you from the other candidates. But what is it you think, kind of in your heart of hearts, that you think really separates you from the other three folks in this race?
The word here. I'm born and raised here in Lafayette Parish. I've served the people here in Lafayette Parish for almost 27 years. I've made the choice to reside and raise my kids here in Lafayette Parish. My kids go to public school here in Lafayette Parish. I've never left Lafayette Parish. I moved away many years ago before I became a police officer and moved back, but my loyalty is here, and I've had two jobs in the last 27 years here in Lafayette Parish, serving the people. And so I think that brings a lot, is knowing the culture, knowing the people, knowing the need. When I worked with the sheriff's office, I've worked in all aspects of this parish, from north, south, central, east, west. Every part of this parish I've worked in. And I've been on the western part of the parish now in the city of Scott for many years. But bottom line, it's here. And that's what I bring, the personal touch. I'm a people person and approachable. And that's one of the things that taking all the experience that I have over the last 27 years, taking that completely out of the picture. I'm here to serve the people, and I've always been here.
So I'm curious, what was it about, because you talked about just being away for a short time before you started into law enforcement. What was it that brought you back to this area?
The people and the food. No.
I think everybody understands that, huh?
The people and the food. Moved away to Florida for a brief time doing electrical work shortly after high school. Worked at a nuclear plant in near St. Petersburg, Florida for almost 2 years, and moved back. Didn't take me long to realize that you can't take the Cajun out of Louisiana.
Yeah.
So, we came back and moved back in September of 1988, and December 1st of 1988, I started with Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office, serving people. So it was a quick decision, and something that I felt at a very young age.
Scott Police Chief Chad Leger joining us in studio this morning for a discussion between now and 8 o'clock. We're talking with him about all aspects of the race, law enforcement, et cetera, as we get a chance to get to know him better, and you do as well. So if you're just joining us, that is who is speaking with us this morning. I'm very curious. 1988, you begin your career in law enforcement. To me, and maybe it's because I'm in the media, it seems like it's changed so considerably. But has it really? The job of a police officer seems like it's 100 times more difficult than it was 25 years ago.
It is. It is very much more difficult. And when I started, I'd hear the older experienced law enforcement officers go, man, things have changed and time to change and this and that. And I was like, I was a rookie, I had no idea what they were talking about.
Right.
And we have seen some drastic changes. The economy's changed, laws have changed, the legal perspectives and just society as a whole, and unfortunately with the way that society has grown anti-law enforcement, until they need. Right. Then when they need, we're their best friend, and that's what we need to reestablish back with law enforcement. And I think we're on the right track of that. We've had a couple bad experiences that law enforcement has had to prevail and to prove themselves to the people. And I think that's one of the biggest things is getting that community-oriented relationship back with our community to show that, hey, we're here for you. It's not against you. We're here for you.
All right, the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office itself, all the employees, the aspect of the deputies and the jail and all the different aspects of the Sheriff's Office. What is your philosophy on looking at that office? What do you think is the most important, maybe, aspect of the Sheriff's Office? Or is there really one thing you can narrow it down to in your mind?
Well, we released our transition plan in August, and there was top three things that we looked at. And the first thing was staffing, and staffing in our enforcement divisions, which are tremendously understaffed. So our enforcement divisions are overworked. Whenever you're supposed to have 11 police officers, or sheriff's deputies, I should say, per shift, and you're running with 5 and 6. These guys are understaffed, and you're not running with how are our staffs and our guys, men and women that are out there protecting the people, how can they be proactive in law enforcement when they're not properly staffed? They're being reactive. All they're doing is going from call to call to call. They have no opportunity to protect people and do the extras to be proactive in law enforcement.
Would you take away from one program to then work more on staffing, or how do you see it working out with getting the needed personnel, and how do you fund it?
Well, I think the funding is definitely there, but I think that one of the things that has been allocated, but I think one of the biggest things is just making sure that the priorities and the backbone of the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office, which is our patrol division, is properly staffed, so it's taking care of the people of the parish. So, you're looking at that, and you're looking at the staffing in the Lafayette Parish Correctional Center. They're tremendously understaffed there. So there goes a whole another topic that we can discuss, where the safety of the inmates, but more importantly, the safety of the deputies who are working in the facility. So we have to make sure that that's properly staffed as well. And then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I interrupted. You had started on number 1, and I was like, okay, what are number 2 and number 3 in the plan?
But that's staffing is top priority, and making sure that we're properly staffed so that we can best serve the people of Lafayette Parish. Number 2 would be the crisis in the jail. And the crisis in jail consists of over 243 cases were reported last year where doors were not secured and crimes were committed because of inmates being allowed to get in and out of their facility after lockdown. And as you've seen in the recent lawsuits that have hit the local media in the past month or so, a lot of these have come coming out. And so I think, it's a big problem. And when you have the security part of it is a huge problem that needs to be addressed, which goes back hand in hand with the safety of our deputies and as well as the inmates that are incarcerated. And then you have the amount of illegal narcotics that have been brought into the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office. We need to work on a better way of screening and scanning the inmate work crews that are coming into the facility to make sure that these narcotics, we've had in one incident, we had 6 ambulances in one night respond to the Lafayette Parish Correctional Facility recently to remove inmates that had overdosed on narcotics. And there's a lot of other problems there. That building was built in 1984 to house 350 people. Now you're over 800. So the wear and tear on that building is just really coming through now with water lines that are busted and a lot of different maintenance issues that are going on that need to be addressed.
So is there something right away that you talk about in your plan where you're going to be able to, put them in a different facility, grow a facility? How do we resolve that? I mean, especially if it is, my goodness, some sort of issues with plumbing and those different things, the infrastructure alone is going to be costly.
It will. And that's something working with our new parish president, whoever is the victor of that election, and because the building belongs to LCG. And so it's a matter of working with the new parish president and the parish council to make sure that these things are fixed. But I do have a vision as far as for moving forward. Sheriff Newsom opened up a huge project off of Willow Street.
Yeah, what are you thinking about that?
There's some extra land there that's available for expansions. I'd like to see some expansion and some centralized facilities being built there, expanding on the incarceration areas as far as for work release program and other inmates that maybe have been sentenced, and slowly moving inmates from the downtown area to that facility if they've been already sentenced or fit a work release program or whatever other criteria that we set forth, but relieving some of that additional stress on the downtown area.
So what do you make of the work that's been done so far, those alternatives to incarceration, especially for the nonviolent offenders that you've cited before with the current Sheriff, Michael Newstrom? What do you think of what he's doing now for the alternatives, and how would you look to build upon that?
I'm glad you asked that question because that's plan number 3. Working with the alternatives. Sheriff Newstrom has done a great job with creating and leading not only Lafayette but Louisiana and surrounding states with these alternatives to incarceration programs. And I think one of the biggest things is to get in there and do a complete evaluation, making sure, number one, they're physically responsible, statistically proven, to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the people of Lafayette Parish. And that's the main thing, is that we have to make sure a lot of these programs were started under grants, and some of these grants have expired. And so the sheriff has resumed the expense and the cost of continuing these great services that he feels that needs to be moved forward. And I think that's one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we have the financial background, if it's within our general budget, or if it's seeking other state or federal grants to continue some of these services. But some of the biggest things that I see with the programs is that Sheriff Newsom is supporting a lot of different great programs. But the unfortunate side of this thing is that when inmates are released from the correctional facility, there's very limited resources for them to continue to get these assistance. If it's mental health, if it's substance abuse, or whatever it may be. And sitting on the Evangelical Law Enforcement Council for the last several years, and treasurer for the last 4 years, I've seen the grant money come through. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, the grant money is diminishing tremendously from the feds and from the state. Money's not as available. So you see a lot of these nonprofit organizations that are closing their doors and they're struggling to make ends meet. So the resources are not out there for the continuing treatments that these inmates need and these individuals need. So when they are released. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I would like to focus on is not only what happens while they are incarcerated, but we need to bring in the entities, the hospitals and treatment centers that are outside so that these people can continue to get the help that they need that we started off while they were incarcerated.
Scott Police Chief Chad Leger joining us in studio. Of course, we're talking about his candidacy for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. The election is coming up on Saturday. So when we return, the next topic, if you will be about perception. Whether it's out on the street or it's the media or it's around the water cooler, I want to know from him and, of course, the other candidates later this week. For a lot of people, perception is reality. So what is the number one thing that Mr. Leger thinks is real about the perceptions that are out there about him? And what's the number one misconception that's out there. Because if perception is reality, it's kind of what we work along as we're kind of making our decisions. So we're going to tackle that when we come back. You're listening to KPEL FM. It's coming up now on 726. Coming up now on 728, Brandon and I are joined in studio this morning by Scott Police Chief Chad Leger, who is obviously also one of the candidates for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. We've been getting a chance to ask some questions. He talks a little bit about what his thoughts are on different aspects of the sheriff's office, his experience in law enforcement. Before the break, I asked him this question, so we're going to delve into this in the beginning of it. Then we'll take a break for news, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about it. So my question, Mr. Leger, is one of, perception really is reality for a lot of people. People are all over Facebook. They're all over Twitter. People talk in their offices about elections. It's almost as exciting as football. And, perception sometimes for people is reality. So I'm curious from your perspective, and you start with whichever one you would like. What would be the number one misconception that might be out there about you? And what's the number one thing that people may be talking about that's just right on for you? That's actually, the facts match up with what the talk on the street may be. So which one would you like to start with, and tell us what you're thinking?
Well, misconception, I am 6'3". I am 250 pounds, and I've dealt with this for many, many years, for over 27 years of the intimidation issue.
Okay,
that has been a huge issue.
Tell me more.
Basically just because of my size, and my father is larger than I am, so it's definitely genetic, and so it's just a matter of people feel sometimes intimidated because of size, and I've had other police officers, really good friends of mine, that are my size or larger, and they deal with that same thing, where same issue, just people perceive you to be intimidating or maybe forceful just by appearance, and that on the other side of it, it's not. It's just it's genetic. There's nothing we can do about it.
Born that way.
Born this way.
So I guess it can be a blessing and a curse, really.
It is because when you're dealing with the argumentative side of people or the combative side of people. When I was a patrol officer and I was on the SWAT team, my size came into play. There's a lot of times that we deterred a lot of incidences from occurring because of the size. But on the other hand, I'm compassionate. I'm helping people each and every day. I have a soft side of me that a lot of people do not realize, and a lot of sentimental side of me that people don't realize. And it's just a matter of trying to balance that scale out as best as possible,
Very interesting. All right, we shall continue that part of the discussion. We're going to take a quick break. We've got Hannity on the way, and then, of course, we'll have local news, and we will continue our discussion with Scott Police Chief Chad Leger on the way. It's coming up now on 731. Coming up now on 743, it is Monday morning as we have a chance to have more conversation this morning with Scott Police Chief Chad Leger, who's also one of the candidates for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. Before we took our break for news, we were talking an awful lot about perception. What's out there? What's real? What's not? So we're asking, what's a misconception out there? And one of the things is that, people think, oh, you're intimidating because of your size, I'm curious as to what might be word on the street about you that you think is, right on of things that people talk about. What do you feel is that?
I'm still a police officer at heart.
Yeah.
It's 27 years, even though I've been an administrator for the last 13 years and a paper pusher and not on the streets. I still understand and have never forgotten where I've come from. And that's one of the toughest things. People want to feel safe. People want to feel that they're protected. They want to make sure their kids are safe while they're in schools. And so that's our job. And sometimes, people don't always see the things the way we see things, and in situations, and we don't always make people happy with every decision that we've made in law enforcement, because if we have two different parties involved in any type of altercation or incident, one's going to be happy at the end and one's not. Even if it's a crash on the street, somebody's going to be upset and somebody's not. So that's one of the biggest things that we feel, and is going out there and doing my job that the people have elected me to do for the last 13 years in the city of Scott. And, we've had some really good statistics that came back in 2012 that Scott was the second safest city in the state of Louisiana, according to our uniform crime reports turned into the FBI. And we recently received that in 2013 we were fifth safest city in the state of Louisiana. So at over 300 municipalities through the state, it's going out and doing our job. And the men and women that serve with me and with our department each and every day are doing the best that they can to make sure that everybody has the best quality of life possible to live and work, and a place for our kids to play, learn, and grow, protecting them while they're in school as well. So that's the tough part about it, but that's what our job is. And sometimes people lose perception of why what we do for a living, and that, I've been elected to be a police chief to protect you. And that's what the men and women in blue do each and every day. So kudos to them for doing their job, and that's, I think, something that really needs to be understood a little bit better with the public.
So how do you plan to do that? Yeah. Is it, what do you think, as we've received a lot of press releases from Scott PD.
Sure.
So we, know some of the things going on. Is that something you plan to carry on to the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office? Go a little further with that? Because, we are the media and we bother you law enforcement people all the time. That's our job too. But now everyday people are on Facebook and Twitter. They have tons of questions, and before they have the correct answers, they'll put out information out there. So how do you plan to tackle that? The media and Facebook, everyday citizens wanting answers, and they want it yesterday instead of today.
Well, first of all, media is not bothering. I think it's a matter of communication, because there's times that you're looking for stories and you're looking for information to do your job. Well, you know what? It's a double side, because there's a lot of times that we need you to help us do our job. We have to put messages out there as far as for pictures on crimes with Crime Stoppers or whatever other releases it may be, that we need help. So it's a matter of working together, and that's what it goes back to. That's what it boils down to. It's about working with communities. It's about bringing community leaders in to the operations, not as an option. Is that it's almost a mandate that you have to bring in these community leaders to say, hey, we need to focus on every aspect of Lafayette Parish, every organization, every situation, whatever it may be. The sheriff, your chief, your parish president, whoever it may be, your city marshal, cannot do it alone. We have to bring in unity across this parish to make sure that Lafayette Parish is a safer place. But it has to be done together as a whole.
So I'm curious, as you talk about safety and, body cameras have become a big issue over the past couple of years. What is your position on body cameras?
Well, in 2013, we were the first police department in the city of Scott was the first police department in Lafayette Parish to implement body cameras. Every one of my police officers have body cameras. And about a month ago, we, like any other technology, we upgraded our body cameras to a newer version that's out on the market now. And I'm a firm believer of them. They've helped us out tremendously. We have in-car cameras in every police car that we have in Scott, as well as body cameras. So, I think it's a huge asset to have these body cameras, and you never know when something's going to transpire where you really need to get it on video. And, a lot of people think, well, it's just in bad situations where maybe a fight or domestic or something like that. Well, these cameras can be used in a lot of different ways. It's a matter of if burglary of a residence or a business. The police officer that first getting on scene, he can turn his body mic on and his body camera on, and start videoing the scene as he approaches and addresses the thing. On a crash, if we have a major crash like on I-10, we had one not long ago that unfortunately turned into a fatality. First officer on the scene can turn that on and video live footage right then and there as he's approaching the scene and everything that's transpiring, because his car is parked probably 100 yards back because we have to block traffic on the interstate, for safety of everyone else involved. So we get that actual footage there. So there's a lot of pros to wearing body cameras.
I'm curious, what was the response from your officers at the beginning when you started to implement the use of body cameras to now? has the response changed much? Was there some apprehension early on? What's been the response?
It was about 50-50 at first. There were some that were thinking, Big Brother wants to watch what we're doing, and Chief wants to see what we're doing. And but the biggest thing is that sitting down with them when we distribute them out to the guys and we set out the policy, and it's letting them know that it's here to protect you. It's here to protect the citizens. It's here to protect the officers. And when they started realizing that our officer complaints have diminished tremendously, and because the cameras do not lie, so when the officer complaints diminished and people going, then they're going, well, yeah, it is in our favor, so they're really using them more and more. And we're going to have a huge server to download a lot of these videos now because, but it's really, really good piece of equipment.
All right, coming up now on 7:51, we do have to take another break, and when we come back, we'll have about 3 minutes or so to wrap up, and we always like to give the final minute to the candidate to share their message with listeners as well. Coming up now on 7:51, again, traffic crash that was reported earlier, Ambassador Caffrey between the area of Settlers Trace and Cully Saloom Road. That's Ambassador between Settlers Trace and Cully Saloom Road and Mudd Avenue at Louisiana Avenue. Scott Police Chief Chad Leger joining us, one of the candidates for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. We shall wrap it up when we return. Coming up now on 7:56, as we are wrapping up this hour with Chad Leger, who is the Scott Police Chief running for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. You know, we always like to give the final moment to the candidate to really kind of talk a little bit about what they want to leave with voters. Obviously, our primary election is coming up this Saturday, so it will be your opportunity to vote for your candidate or candidates in the various races. And Mr. Leger, I want to thank you very much for the time, obviously, this morning and coming here and talking with us, letting people get to know you a little bit more, kind of not necessarily one-on-one, but I guess kind of close enough to it that, you know, we could spend the time with you. As we kind of wrap up here this morning, what is it that you want to leave people with as far as you and your candidacy?
Like I mentioned earlier, the key word is here. The other primary number is 26. And what I mean by that is the last 26 years, I've dedicated my life to the people of Lafayette Parish here in Lafayette, working here at Lafayette Sheriff's Office here for the city of Scott, serving the people here, raising my family and my kids here, sending my kids to public school here in Lafayette Parish. And that's a big, big thing. And it's understanding the culture, the dynamics of what we need to do for the future and the safety of Lafayette Parish. I bring the experience in law enforcement. I bring the proven leadership as a chief of police. I bring the passion to serve the people. You know, over 27 years, a lot of people say, man, you have 3 years, you could retire with your 30 years, you know, like most police and fire, 30 years, they're done. You know, at the age of 49, I'm not ready to quit. I still have a lot of passion and drive to go. So I ask people to please consider me. I appreciate their support and their vote this coming Saturday in the election, and I look forward to serving each and every one of them as their sheriff.
All right. Chad Leger has been our guest, Police Chief in Scott, also one of the candidates for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you all very much.
Time now for your Fox Business Report.